My name is Maya Thorne, and I live in the shadow of a miracle. To be precise, I live in Tromsø, Norway, a city clinging to the edge of the Arctic Circle, where the northern lights put on a show nearly half the year. I'm sharing this not because I seek fame, but because I was given a truth too massive, too urgent, to keep locked away inside a man who once believed only in the cold, hard logic of data and the predictable cycles of the cosmos. I have spent the last 15 years as a search and rescue (SAR) technician for the Norwegian Red Cross, based out of Tromsø. My life has been dedicated to the tangible, rappelling down icy rock faces, navigating whiteout blizzards, locating the lost hikers, and stabilizing the broken. My reality was defined by GPS coordinates, body temperature readings, and the unyielding laws of physics. If you couldn't measure it, see it, or touch it, it didn't exist. I was the man who kept his head while everyone else lost theirs, a skeptic by profession and a realist by nature. If anyone had told me, even 6 months ago, that I would sit here recounting a message from the divine, I would have politely but firmly suggested they seek a warm beverage and a mental health consultation. But life, as I have learned, has a horrifying and beautiful way of shattering your convictions. The date was November 14th, 2024. The polar night was settling in, a time of year when the sun barely crests the horizon, leaving the world in a perpetual, deep twilight, the blue hour. It was a day like any other, which is to say, exhausting. We had spent the night before on a challenging retrieval of a hiker who'd taken a nasty fall near the Fjellheisen cable car base. I got home just before 4 a.m. I couldn't sleep. The high Arctic air was a balm to my overwired nerves, so I did what I always do. I went for a run. My route takes me along the Tromsøya shoreline, a path that hugs the fjord, giving me a clear view of the mainland mountains. The snow was crisp under my boots. It was 5:48 a.m., the only light coming from the distant city lamps and the ghostly shimmer of the aurora borealis, a faint green ribbon overhead. The air was so clear, so still, it felt like the world was holding its breath. That's when the snowmobile came out of nowhere. It was speeding, well past the limit for that trail, an illegal joyride in the pre-dawn silence. The driver, as I later learned, was a young tourist who'd rented the machine and was clearly intoxicated, blinded by the very lights of the city he was fleeing. I saw the flash of the headlight, the silhouette of the machine banking sharply, and I remember thinking, "Move, Elias, move." There was no time. The impact wasn't a memory, but a sudden, violent cessation. One moment I was inhaling the crisp, frigid air of the fjord, alive and running. The next, the universe was ripped out from under me. Everything went dark. And yet, it was not the nothingness I had always expected. The arrival in the lighted domain. Instead of the absolute void, I found myself in a place defined by light. It was a light utterly unlike the sun, the stars, or the aurora I knew. This light was a palpable presence, pure gold and silver, bathing everything not with mere illumination, but with an inherent understanding. It didn't cast shadows, because it flowed from every direction, filling every space. The instant I registered this, all the burdens I had carried, the fear of a failed rescue, the gnawing regret of a harsh word spoken, the fatigue of endless shifts, vanished. It was a profound, absolute stillness, a peace that transcended the capacity of my human nervous system to comprehend. I was, for the first time, truly unburdened. It was the feeling of a ship finally dropping anchor in a harbor it was created for. I was home. I stood, not on snow or rock, but on a surface that felt like polished glass, yet gave way beneath my feet with the softness of warm sand. The environment around me defied earthly geometry. There were structures that seemed to be built of sound and color, not stone. The colors. They were shades I had never seen, vibrant beyond all terrestrial experience, hues that seemed to sing. The air itself thrummed with a music that wasn't notes and rhythm, but the pure, distilled essence of joy and perfect harmony. It resonated deep within my chest, a physical confirmation that everything was, and would always be, perfect. As I struggled to reconcile my cynical, scientific mind with this reality, I saw a figure approaching. It was a woman. Her hair was the color of fresh fallen snow in the moonlight, but her face was eternally young, illuminated by the pervasive light. I recognized her immediately, though she had been gone for decades. My grandmother, Astrid. She had raised me in the isolated fishing village outside Tromsø, and was the quiet, rock-solid foundation of my childhood. She looked more vibrant than I had ever seen her. There was a gentle, celestial energy to her movements, a faint luminescence around her form. Her smile, which used to crinkle the corners of her eyes, now seemed to radiate the very peace of the place. "Elias," she said, her voice a melody, "do not be afraid. He is waiting." Before I could ask the torrent of questions welling up, how? Where am I? What happened to me? She simply reached out, took my hand, and in that instant, a lifetime of unspoken love, understanding, and shared memory flowed between us. It wasn't a conversation. It was a total exchange. I suddenly understood her deep, quiet faith, the resilience of her life, and the purpose of her gentle guidance. "You need to see," she whispered, her eyes full of ancient wisdom and compassion. "The messenger awaits." With that, the golden light around us intensified, drawing my attention forward to a singularity of breathtaking brilliance. And the vision of the messenger. And then I saw him. The sight of Christ defies all language. He was not the pale, solemn figure of classical artwork, nor was he a phantom of smoke and mirrors. He was solid, yet utterly transcendent. His presence was a magnetic field of unconditional love and infinite power. He was the anchor of all reality, and I felt my knees buckle, not in fear, but in the overwhelming recognition of holiness. His face was kind, yet held the wisdom of all ages. His eyes, they were the most startling part. They looked upon me and saw everything, my triumphs, my failures, my every cynical thought, my hidden acts of kindness, and my potential. There was no judgment, only a deep, profound acceptance that made my very soul weep. He reached out a hand, a human hand, scarred with an incomprehensible majesty, and gently touched my shoulder. "Elias?" His voice was a resonant frequency, a deep, gentle hum that seemed to speak directly into the core of my being. "The watchman must see what is coming. My people who dwell in the deep shadows need to know." Then, with an effortless gesture, he showed me 4 visions. Each was projected into the light around us, not as an image on a screen, but as an experience that I lived through, felt, and understood with absolute clarity. The first event, the grand silencing. I saw the world drowning in noise. It wasn't just the clamor of cities, but a psychic, digital static. People were voluntarily deafening themselves to anything meaningful. They were obsessed with fleeting moments of outrage, entertainment, and shallow status. Families sat together in homes in Bergen and Oslo, but communicated only through the glow of individual screens. In the great cathedrals of the world, even the faithful were checking their feeds mid-prayer, their focus fractured, their devotion thin. The collective consciousness was a vast, shallow ocean of distraction, leaving the soul thirsty for depth, but content with the superficial. Christ looked at me, his expression one of infinite patience, yet urgency. The adversary does not need to use fire or chains. He uses the subtle hand of apathy and noise. Tell my people in the north, tell them across the globe, turn off the static. Seek the stillness, for it is in the quiet that my voice is heard, and in the quiet that the soul is strengthened to face what is real. The second event, the climate of fear. The vision shifted, and I saw a pervasive fear gripping humanity. It was born not just of natural disasters and conflict, but of systematic, endless psychological pressure. I saw global leaders and powerful entities using crises, real and manufactured, to strip people of their autonomy, their critical thought, and their individual spirit. They promised security in exchange for freedom, and most people willingly handed over their conscience for the illusion of safety. The narrative of division was weaponized, turning neighbor against neighbor, community against community. Even those who followed the messenger began to suspect one another, terrified of being on the wrong side of the approved opinion. "They will trade truth for comfort," the messenger said, his voice a powerful rumble. "They will embrace the lie of control and turn their backs on the divine sovereignty. Tell them this: fear is the weapon of the oppressor. Stand firm in my truth. My word is the only reliable compass in the storms of this age. Trust not in the promises of man, but in the promises of God." The third event, the solstice of the spirit. My heart, which had been heavy, leaped with the third vision. I saw an incredible awakening. It began not in the grand cities, but in small, isolated communities, in a humble gathering in a fishing boat off the coast of Lofoten, in a small farmhouse in the prairies of Canada, in a secret prayer meeting in the mountains of China. People were returning to the genuine, transformative faith. This was not a meek, passive faith. It was a joyful, defiant, and active love. I saw healings that defied medical science, acts of radical charity, and lives turning from darkness to light in an instant. This movement was characterized by an unshakable inner joy that no persecution could dim. But with this solstice of the spirit, the shadows also deepened. I saw the awakened mocked in the media, persecuted in their jobs, and marginalized by society. Yet, as the oppression grew, their light only shone brighter, their communal bonds unbreakable. "My spirit will move like the great winds across the earth," Christ declared, his presence radiating hope. "Tell them to cling to one another in love. The cost of discipleship will be steep, but the fellowship of my followers will be their unshakable refuge. Tell them to embrace the joy in the midst of the trial, for their reward is eternal, and their witness in this hour is vital." The fourth event, the final aurora, the last vision, was the most transcendent and terrifying. The sky above, which had been the gentle, illuminated light, suddenly split. It was a rupture in reality, and through it poured an impossible, blinding glory. There he was, descending not as a lamb, but as the King of all creation, attended by vast legions of celestial beings, their armor flashing with the light of 1,000 suns. The entire world stopped. The grand silencing ceased. The climate of fear evaporated, replaced by either perfect awe or absolute dread. Every human being, from the Arctic Circle to the southern plains, saw him and knew him. Every knee bowed, and every tongue confessed. The time of debate, doubt, and distraction was over. It was the absolute, final, and glorious end of the age. "This is the great return," the messenger proclaimed, his voice encompassing all sound. "It is closer than any believe. Tell them to be ready. Tell them I am coming to gather my own, and to set the record right. Live as if this is your last day. Love as if this is your final moment, and share the truth with the certainty of one who has seen the future." The command to go back. As the vision faded, I felt a familiar human sense of overwhelming inadequacy return. I, a cynical SR technician, tasked with carrying the most profound message in history. I fell forward, not to the ground, but into the space before him, filled with an unanswerable question. He placed his hand over my heart. A rush of profound warmth, energy, and certainty flowed into me. It felt like my very essence was being reforged, given a new purpose. "Elias," he said, "you were chosen not for your strength, but for your willingness. You have lived a life based on the quantifiable, the map, the rope, the signal. Now you must live by faith in the unquantifiable love I have shown you. My spirit will give you the words, and my grace will sustain you against the scorn of the world. Do not carry this message. Let it carry you." Then, with a gentle, undeniable command, the watchman must return to his post. "Your work is not yet finished." In that very instant, the all-encompassing light collapsed inward. The heavenly music dissolved. The warmth was replaced by a brutal, shocking jolt and an agonizing, searing pain. I was thrown violently back into my body. My lungs seized, pulling in a ragged, freezing gasp of the Tromsø air. My chest was burning, my bones screaming, and I opened my eyes to see the familiar, concerned faces of my own team, fellow SAR members, now wearing the hats of first responders, surrounding me on the fjord path. "He's back!" I heard Svein, our medic, shout, his voice trembling with a mix of shock and relief. "Pulse is weak, but he's breathing. 15 minutes, we had him for 15 minutes, Elias. 15 minutes. That's how long they had been working to revive me. 15 minutes of clinical death. But in that time, I had traveled an eternity. I wanted to tell them everything. The light, Astrid, the messenger, the 4 events. But all I could do was grip Svein's arm, tears streaming down my face, freezing instantly in the Arctic air. I was back in the world of facts, figures, and pain, but I carried a truth that was beyond all of them.